Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Dragon Trail's second webinar this July. This one's sponsored by Jing Travel. Today, we prepared an extensive update into Chinese travel trends, digital developments, and WeChat marketing for tourism in the first half of 2019. For those of you who might be joining a Dragon Trail webinar for the first time and might not have heard from me before, my name is Sienna Perulis-Cook, and I'm Dragon Trail's Communications Manager. I present webinars like this one, write and publish weekly articles and reports on the Dragon Trail website, create our China Outbound Travel Pulse video series together with the China Outbound Tourism Research Institute, and I run Dragon Trail's social media channels on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm also co-author of our newly released book, China, the Future of Travel, and I work on a freelance basis as a Mandarin language tour guide in the UK. Dragon Trail Interactive is a digital marketing and solutions agency that's focused entirely on China, on digital, and on travel. We help travel businesses and organizations around the world to connect with Chinese consumers and the Chinese travel trade. The company was founded 10 years ago in Beijing, and we now have offices in Shanghai, Xi'an, London, where I'm based, and Lexington, Kentucky in the US. We work with clients on every continent except Antarctica, including tourism boards, airlines, cruise lines, hotels, attractions, and other industry verticals. We run free monthly webinars, and all of our previous webinars are recorded and available to watch on our website. If you're signed up to our newsletter, you'll also get reminders and invitations to our upcoming webinars, and you are also able to find information about upcoming webinars and live speaking events on the events section of our website. We will be sending out a PDF of today's presentation slides to all attendees in the coming days, so you'll have these links for your reference to all of our past webinars from this year. We're very pleased to have media partner Jing Travel sponsor today's webinar and to work with them on content sharing throughout the year. Jing Travel is the sister site to Jing Daily, the leading business publication covering luxury trends from China. Travel and culture-focused Jing Travel is the ultimate resource for cultural institutions looking to attract a larger slice of the Chinese outbound travel market. Cultural travel is an important and growing segment of Chinese outbound travel, and Jing Travel's editors and global team of writers provide data and insights into this area. You can visit their website at jingtravel.com and scan the QR code here to connect to their WeChat account. There's also a direct contact here for their Director of Strategic Partnerships. On today's agenda, we'll first be looking at Chinese travel trends in the first half of 2019, with general developments and news as well as updates on specific world regions. Then we'll look at Chinese digital developments this year, especially in relation to travel. After that, I'll present a deep dive into WeChat marketing for travel in 2019, based on Dragon Trail's WeChat rankings reports, looking at both the leading accounts and 6 different categories of travel brands, as well as the content themes that are attracting the most views on the Chinese social media platform. We'll finish with a quick look at which areas have the most potential for development, and then we can take questions. You are welcome to ask questions at any point during the webinar, and we'll answer those at the end of the webinar. I would ask that you please ask questions using the Q&A button, which you should see on your Zoom control panel, and not ask them in the chat area. This is because if you use the Q&A button, the questions will all get logged in an area where they're very easy to see and make sure that we answer at the end of the webinar, whereas in the chat area, they tend to get lost. And again, we will be sending out a PDF of the presentation slides from today to all attendees, as well as a link to a recorded webinar, so you'll have that to review if needed. So what's happened in Chinese outbound tourism this year so far? Looking at a global overview of the market, Chinese outbound travel is continuing to grow at a healthy rate. According to a report from the European Tourism Commission, total outbound travel bookings from China to the rest of the world are up 9.3% this year. Forward Keys data from the first 4 months of the year shows even stronger growth for independent travel, with a 12.7% increase in FIT in the first 4 months of the year, as well as a nearly 19% rise in FIT during the Chinese New Year period. Data from the hospitality industry is positive too, with Airbnb forecasting in May that China would be their largest source market by next year. Chinese people aren't just taking more trips abroad, but they're also traveling to more places. Hotel beds data showed that Chinese traveled to 102 countries during Chinese New Year 2019, which is 14 more countries than the year before. There are many factors facilitating this growth in tourism, and one of them is increased flight connections. Since 2019 began, there are now 3 new routes from China to Rome, a new route from China to Ireland, the first direct flight from China to Norway, a flight to Budapest, several new flights to Helsinki, and what's interesting here is that Helsinki was actually the first city in Europe to have a direct China flight back in 1978. But until this year, Finnair ran all of those flights. It's only in 2019 that Chinese airlines are now also flying to Helsinki. But at the same time, Finnair is increasing capacity on some of its China routes as well, so we can understand how important Helsinki is as a hub for Chinese travel to Europe. There are also new routes to London, to Vancouver, and the first flight connecting China to a French city outside of Paris will be launching this Friday. Looking forward to September, there's a new China-South Africa flight launching, and then the opening of Beijing's second international airport, Dashing. The first international carrier that has announced they'll move their Beijing flights there is British Airways, and that will be starting from the end of October. The Chinese government is also actively supporting the increase in outbound travel by first changing the law about where people can apply for a passport in April, which makes the process easier, and then reducing passport application fees by 25% at the start of this month. Visa waivers and visa reforms also have a significant impact on Chinese arrivals, and 2019 has seen a number of developments here. Japan and Ukraine now offer e-visas to simplify the process. In an effort to attract more tourism, Iran and Sri Lanka have become visa-free for Chinese tourists. Ireland now offers 5-year multiple entry visas, and Singapore and Malaysia have also made reforms so that it's easier for Chinese who are already traveling abroad in the area to visit those countries. Moving on from a general overview, I'll now offer some information on specific destination markets, as this is not uniform across the world. The first market to talk about is Europe, where growth is very positive on the whole, based on data from the European Travel Commission, hotel beds, and Eurail. According to the European Tourism Commission, bookings to Europe were up almost 17% in the first 4 months of 2019, and 17 out of 22 of the European markets that they tracked showed growth either in arrivals, in night stayed, or both from Chinese visitors. In May, hotel beds reported that there was a 40% year-on-year increase in Chinese reservations in hotels in Europe, and Eurail also predicted a 14% growth in Chinese customers this year. In Europe, there seems to be good news both for traditional and new destinations. The ETC's travel sentiment survey showed that Chinese visitors were interested in traditional Western European destination countries, such as France, Germany, the UK, Italy, and Switzerland. TripAdvisor data also shows that there's been a surge in interest in travel to the UK, with a 133% increase in Chinese travelers researching UK destinations this year compared to last year. However, it's actually Southeastern Europe where we're really seeing the most growth. Serbia waived visas for Chinese tourists last year, and Montenegro is visa-free for Chinese tour groups. Both of these countries are seeing rapid increases, with an additional 39% in Chinese arrivals to Serbia in the first quarter of 2019, and a 44% increase to Montenegro. However, other countries in Southeastern Europe are experiencing large growth in Chinese travelers as well, with a 125% increase in Q1 in arrivals to Cyprus and a 53% increase to Croatia. Zagreb in Croatia also had a 20% increase in Chinese tourism that the city reported in the first half of 2019, and Chinese tourists to Sarajevo in Serbia had increased by 110%, comparing May 2019 with May 2018, and 205% if you compare April in 2019 to 2018. The visa waiver from 2018 went into effect at the end of May. Bulgaria is another country that is seeing rapid increase, and it seems that Bulgaria is working together to promote travel with Ctrip, China's largest OTA. Ctrip bookings to Bulgaria are up 500% in the first half of 2019, and the president of Bulgaria recently traveled to Shanghai to meet with Ctrip's CEO earlier in the summer. News for, I should go back just quickly to Southeastern Europe, and also ask that if you do have questions to please ask those using the Q&A button and not the chat. Thank you. There's also data from Fliggy, which is the OTA from Alibaba, which is in a report that they recently released, and we have translated and published today on our website. The data from Fliggy shows it's based just on summertime travel, and it shows actually a 671% increase in summertime travel to Montenegro and a 206% increase in travel to Serbia, as well as a 172% increase in travel to Malta. So these are really huge numbers to increase Chinese travel to Southeastern Europe. I actually can answer a question right now that I've seen about driving, what is driving this rapid increase in Chinese numbers to Southeastern Europe. In some ways, one of the biggest drivers is the visa waivers that we're seeing. Serbia and Montenegro going visa-free for Chinese travelers has had a very big impact on Chinese travel there. And then if Chinese are traveling to that area anyway, it's very unlikely for Chinese travelers to any part of Europe to be going on a single country route. They would prefer to combine a trip to Europe with visiting many different countries at the same time. So if they're traveling to Serbia, for instance, they'll probably look at countries in the area that they can combine with that trip. There's also a trend with Chinese travelers who may have already visited Western Europe and are looking for a new destination. And so in that way, Southeastern Europe is a new place to explore. And this part of the world is also receiving a tourism boom in general, especially Croatia has been popular with tourists from all over the world, not just China in recent years. I should also add that there is potentially a link between the China's Belt and Road Initiative in Southeastern Europe and some of the countries in Eastern Europe as well that are cooperating with China on an economic basis, and so also receiving more support and promotion for outbound tourism to those countries at the same time. Moving on to the US, news for the US, as you probably know, is unfortunately not nearly as positive as it is for Europe. In June, official data showed that Chinese arrivals to the US were down by 5.7% in 2018, which is the first decline in 15 years. A recent analysis by Forbes shows that actually the decline in Chinese traveling for pleasure during that time, so AKA tourists, was over 10%, and it's over 5% lower still in 2019. This has also affected Chinese tourist spending in the US, with Q1 spending in New York City down by nearly 12%. Of course, the decline is not uniform throughout the US, and some areas may be less affected, such as California, and some areas have been more affected, such as Hawaii, where the Hawaii Tourism Authority recently reported that their Chinese visitor numbers are down by 36%. The US was still the 9th most popular destination for Chinese traveling during the May holiday in 2019, but this is a drop from 5th place in 2018. Moreover, in general, long-haul destinations were more popular than ever this May holiday in China, as the holiday period was lengthened from 3 to 4 days. Hotel Beds reported that 10 out of the top 30 destination cities for the May holiday were long-haul destinations, compared to just 3 out of the top 30 in 2018. Also this May, Horwath HTL and the World Tourism Alliance published a survey of the Chinese travel trade, which showed that North America was one of the regions that Chinese travel agents were most pessimistic about for travel in 2019. There are many overlapping reasons for this decline in tourism to the US, and Dragon Trail released an extensive report on the topic in June that's available to read on our website. The reasons include negative media coverage and travel warnings in China, which we can safely assume are related to the Sino-US trade war, fears about gun violence and other safety issues. The Chinese outbound tourism market is especially sensitive to issues surrounding safety. There is also sentiment and fear that the US is unwelcoming to foreigners, especially non-white foreigners, and there are increasing visa rejection rates. In the first 5 months of 2019, there has been a 17% decrease in the number of short-term visitor visas to the US issued to Chinese citizens. And this could be due to increased rejections, decreasing applications, or a combination of both of those reasons. One final factor that we at Dragon Trail don't think is adequately acknowledged in this decline is the current exchange rate, which is a result of US tariffs on China and has decreased Chinese buying power, not only in the US, but to some other destinations as well. The other big North American market is Canada, and while the situation here is better than in the US, growth has slowed this year. As of May, Chinese arrivals are down by just 1% compared to 2018. Arrivals were record-breaking in January, and then they dropped a lot in February, but we can understand this fluctuation as being affected by the fact that Chinese New Year was in the middle of February in 2018, and it was then in early February in 2019. So that's what is affecting the time of arrivals between January and February. There are several important factors to understand in regards to the Canadian market. First, there are political tensions over the arrest of Huawei's CFO in Vancouver in December, and then Canadians that were subsequently detained in China. China also issued a safety warning about travel to Canada. This situation led to a number of Canadian tourism bodies pausing their marketing to China at the start of the year, although these have since been resumed. Another important thing is that while we've seen that countries around the world are making it easier for Chinese to get visas or doing away with visas for Chinese tourists altogether, the Canadian visa application process actually got stricter in January of this year. So this caused a surge in applications in December and then a sharp drop in January. And this also came up in the World Tourism Alliance report that I mentioned earlier, where they interviewed hundreds of Chinese travel agents. It came up as the factor that most worried Chinese travel agents about prospects of tourism to Canada in 2019. In Oceania, growth of arrivals to Australia has slowed, but growth in spending is quite strong, which is kind of an ideal situation, implying that the country is successfully attracting higher spending tourists. Results have not been so good in New Zealand because of political issues over Huawei's 5G technology. The China-New Zealand tourism year launch was delayed, but this probably isn't anything to worry about. Actually, research from the China Outbound Tourism Research Institute on tourism years that was released this spring shows that tourism years really have no correlation with increased arrivals whatsoever. Looking at overall economic data, though, trade between China and New Zealand is also down. So this and tourism could together be something that's being affected by currency purchasing power and perhaps a side effect of the trade war and its effects on China's economy. In Asia, it's a mixed picture, but mostly positive. Arrivals to Vietnam and Thailand are both down, but this may just be because Chinese tourists are visiting new or different Asian destinations. Arrivals are up modestly to Singapore with a 4% rise, 11.7% to Japan. South Korea seems to finally be recovering from 2017's tourism ban with a 30% increase this year so far. Arrivals to Myanmar are surging with 140% increase in the first half of 2019. And growth to North Korea is also very strong, thanks in part to the reopening of the mass games to the public. Fliggy data actually shows that there is a 256% increase in purchases of travel to North Korea this summer. I don't have as much specific 2019 data for the Middle East, but this is another market with positive forecasts, and Etihad Airways is upgrading their China-Abu Dhabi flights to a larger plane, which shows increased demand and optimism about the future. For Africa, sentiment from the travel trade is positive, and we're seeing really active tourism marketing from a number of African countries to China this year, which should have positive results. We would expect continued growth for this fairly niche market, which is only getting maybe 1% or a little bit over 1% of the Chinese outbound tourism market right now, but is an area that is especially interesting, especially for experienced and luxury Chinese travelers. South America is also a very niche market, and it doesn't get anywhere near the numbers as Asia, Europe, or North America do. But the numbers here should continue to grow as well, and increased marketing from many South American countries will lead to increased interest from Chinese consumers as well as the Chinese travel trade. We're actually starting to regularly see Peru in our weekly WeChat rankings this year, for example, and this is something that no South American country before has ever really reached those top 20 lists every week. So now let's look at some of the biggest digital developments in China in 2019. For payments, mobile payments specifically with Alipay and WeChat Pay, the list of countries that can now accept Alipay and or WeChat Pay is not nearly as impressive as it was around this time last year. This time last year, we had very long lists of countries that had become Alipay ready or WeChat Pay ready, especially around the Chinese New Year period, 2018. This year, we can just see that Slovenia and Turkey are two new countries where Alipay can now be accepted. However, the fact that the list of countries is not as big this year as last year does not in any way imply that these payment platforms are not expanding. In fact, now that they've been established in so many countries, more retailers are starting to actually get set up to accept the payments. So the photo that you can see here is something that I actually took this weekend in the window of a small antique shop in Bath, England, announcing that they accept Alipay. So this is just one example of how Chinese mobile payments are spreading beyond capital cities, beyond airport duty-free shops, and beyond the major department stores that were the first early adopters of these kinds of Chinese mobile payment platforms. However, major department stores are continuing to start adding these mobile payment capabilities, with Neiman Marcus stores in the US becoming Alipay ready this year. Budapest Airport now accepts Alipay and China Union Pay now that they have a flight from Shanghai, and Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam became Europe's first officially designated WeChat Pay Smart Airport in May, which means that they have WeChat Pay acceptance as well as an official account on WeChat. Chinese companies would like to hold on to the Chinese traveler for a longer portion of the travel experience and at more touch points along the way. So this includes getting into in-destination ticketing, for example, and another way is ride-sharing apps. Both Ctrip and Alipay have been developed in-app international ride-hailing services this year with Chinese language interface and payment in renminbi. This makes the process easier for Chinese tourists, and it saves them having to download a new app or link an international credit card. Short video has continued to grow in China, with Douyin, aka TikTok, as one leader that seems to come up most in the news. There's an example here of a Douyin video that was taken in Scotland and has over 25,000 likes. However, short videos are also ubiquitous on Weibo through Miaopai and more frequent on WeChat as well through Weishi and Tencent Video. Short video is increasingly becoming a must for tourism marketers, as we'll see a little bit later when we look at WeChat content for the year. At the same time, though, short video platforms Douyin and Kuaishou are now both experimenting with longer 15-minute long video formats. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see what happens with those kinds of developments over the next 6 months and year. Baidu is one of China's 3 internet giants, and it's China's leading search engine. The company is also the owner of Ctrip. However, Baidu has taken a hit this year, and the company in Q1 of this year reported its first ever decline in revenue since it went public. Part of the reason for the decline is that search is fragmenting in China, with internet behavior now very mobile app focused. So for example, if you want to search for travel information, you'd use Ctrip or Mafangwo. If you want to search for restaurants, you go to Dianping. For news, it's Weibo or a news rating app. So Baidu is still the dominant search engine, but this shift and fragmentation of search is good for marketers to keep an eye on at this point when they're thinking about things like SEO and SEM in the future. WeChat mini programs continue to attract more users in China, and other apps like Douyin and Alipay have also launched their own mini program ecosystems in the last year. Travel brands have also launched a number of new mini programs over the past 6 months, with some interesting features such as Auckland, New Zealand's mini program, which can put tourists in touch with local Chinese to help give them travel advice. We've also seen new WeChat mini programs from Visit Scotland, from the Burj Khalifa, and from Helsinki. And the city of Melbourne has launched a mini program through Alipay, which especially supports local retailers as well as Alipay payment. Now it's time to talk about Dragon Trail's WeChat rankings. For those of you who haven't followed our WeChat rankings before, from the start of 2017, we've tracked WeChat accounts for national and regional tourism boards, airlines, and cruise lines. In April of 2018, we added museums and attractions and hotels as 2 new categories to the list. Every week, we release rankings tables based on the total number of views that the account's WeChat articles got. We also track how many articles each account published, how many likes the articles got, the average number of views per post, and which article had the highest number of views. We publish quarterly and annual reports analyzing all of this data, and you'll find both our weekly rankings and all of the reports on our website, as well as released on our social media channels. Today, I'll be presenting our Q2 and H1 data from 2019 and the major trends and content that we've seen this year. For national tourism boards, Japan is far and away the leader, as it has been since the start of 2018. Like in 2018, Japan's most popular post of the first half of this year has been a guide to viewing cherry blossoms. The Tourism Authority of Thailand's Beijing office comes in second place, both for the quarter and for the first half of the year. This account posts more frequently than the other accounts do, and their top articles generally focus on events and festivals. In third place for both the quarter and the first half of the year is New Zealand, which always has the highest average views per post in the quarterly rankings, and they generally post about New Zealand's beautiful landscapes. Looking at Q2, the 4th highest ranked NTO account was Australia, and then the 5th highest ranked account was France. This is actually very noteworthy because it's the first time ever since we've started tracking WeChat accounts that a European account has made the top 5 for the quarter. Austria has also been having a very strong year on WeChat, and Tourism Ireland is regularly present in the weekly top 20 charts now, when it really wasn't a very visible account before. I'm referring to a lot of charts and numbers, but not putting them on the screen right now because it would be kind of information overload. But if you do want to see all of the charts with all of the different numbers, those are available as part of the quarterly WeChat rankings reports that are on our website and also published on social media channels. Especially in Q2, Visit Fiji has been a dark horse. It's not usually ever in the top 20 tables, but it has reached 16th place in Q2 of this year, and it also had the 6th highest number of average post views. In the past, the Kenya Tourism Board was usually the only African account to make the quarterly rankings tables, but now South Africa has been there for the past 3 quarters. As I mentioned earlier, we're even starting to see the Peruvian Tourism Board in the weekly rankings recently, which has never happened for a South American destination before. So this kind of rise of non-traditional and more niche destinations gives us some clues into maybe increased interest from the Chinese market into these less traditional destinations, moving away from North America and Europe and Australia, and looking at new continents and places for travel inspiration and information. For regional and municipal tourism boards, Hong Kong and Dubai are far in the lead. Actually, if we counted these as national tourism boards, Hong Kong would come in second, after Japan and before Thailand, and Dubai would be ahead of New Zealand. Hong Kong is the #1 destination for Chinese outbound tourists, so this stands to reason. And Dubai's success can be attributed to a very strong multifaceted marketing strategy and a partnership with WeChat parent company Tencent. In third place for Q2 for DMOs is Los Angeles, followed by Macau in 4th place, and then Vancouver in 5th place. Looking beyond the top 3 accounts for the first half of the year, Hong Kong, Dubai, and Macau, US regional and municipal accounts are very much in the lead. It's actually 8 out of the top 20 of the top regional and municipal tourism board accounts in Q2 were US accounts. Tourism Los Angeles is the leader of these, but Travel South USA has also been very strong this year as well. Northwestern Canadian accounts, Vancouver and British Columbia, have done well as Australian regional accounts. While European DMOs aren't as strong as these larger countries' DMOs are, Edinburgh, Bavaria, and Geneva stand out as the leaders for European regional and municipal accounts. For airlines, AirAsia is always far ahead of competition, though it's been a particularly good year for All Nippon Airways as well. The airline rankings are usually dominated by Asian carriers, and 2019 is no different in this area. So for Q2 rankings, for example, it's not until 10th place that we get to Air New Zealand, which is the first non-Asian carrier, followed by KLM in 11th place, Emirates Airlines in 13th, Air Canada in 14th, and Air France in 15th place. Cruise lines tend to get the most views for posts about deals and promotions, though themes like traveling with children, parents, or romantic partners can do well as introductions to the ships and their amenities. And for Viking cruises, which came in 3rd place both for the first half of the year and for Q2, they have had some popular guides to Europe where they run their river cruises. Royal Caribbean is, as usual, in the lead for the cruise line category. The museums and attractions category is really dominated by Hong Kong theme parks, though below this are leading museums from around the world. The British Museum is one of the most popular museum accounts on WeChat since they started posting around the end of the summer last year. Part of the reason that the British Museum is so popular on WeChat is that the British Museum also last summer opened up a store on Chinese e-commerce site Tmall, selling items like jewelry that relate to the British Museum collection. Their Tmall store is extremely popular, and it's brought a lot of awareness and interest for the British Museum. Actually, the British Museum's post on women in the arts was the highest viewed post by any museum in the first half of 2019. The Louvre is also one of the most popular museum accounts on WeChat, as well as the National Gallery Victoria in Melbourne. And in the US, New York City's Museum of Modern Art is the most popular museum. For hotels, Marriott is always at the top of the rankings, but Malia Hotels is doing very well this year too, and they're posting more about international properties than many of the other major chains do. One of the only really major changes we've seen in the hotel accounts this year so far has been the fact that the Starwood account has been deleted because since the merger of Marriott and Starwood, now these accounts have been merged too, and only the Marriott account is posting. So we've seen an even bigger increase in views for that account. So now let's look at the content that has attracted the highest number of views on WeChat. This year, romance is especially popular. So the examples that I have here are Tourism Ireland's article about a Chinese celebrity wedding in County Limerick in June, a Valentine's Day post from the Louvre, and an article about getting engaged on Star Cruises. So you can see that this kind of romantic theme works across many different industry verticals. China has several of its own Valentine's Days, which is quite useful for marketers. One of these is the 20th of May, which sounds like I love you if you say the date out loud in Chinese. And the next Chinese Valentine's Day is called Qixi, and it's coming up next Wednesday, August 7th. So it's not too late to prepare some related content for that. September and October are also the most popular months for getting married in China, so that is also something that you can keep in mind for future marketing. Celebrities always help to bring a boost in article views on Chinese social media, and they can attract new audiences. Visit Fiji's success this past quarter is definitely tied to the fact that actor and singer Leo Loy is their new brand ambassador and features in most of their WeChat posts. Australian brands work a lot with Chinese celebrities as well, and the examples here are a giveaway of photos of actor Zhu Yilong, which were given away to promote the Vivid Sydney Festival, and a post of Nicholas C. filming a music video in Australia. Last year, very notably, South Australia Tourism worked together with Chinese actor Huang Xiaoming, and posts about that were still bringing higher views to South Australia's WeChat account up until the beginning of this year. Nature and wildlife are always also popular topics on WeChat, as evidenced by the fact that New Zealand consistently has the highest average article views, and they almost only post about landscapes. Nature can work as a theme even if you're a big city. Tourism LA's most popular post of this year so far has been about waterfalls and canyons. And British Columbia got a lot of attention for its article on Vancouver being the greenest city. Kenya's standout article of the year was about the animal migration season, and it included a number of short videos of wildlife in Kenya. TV shows and movies are a major influence on Chinese tourists' choice of travel destination, and travel brands are taking advantage of this on WeChat. There are many more examples than the ones that I've shown here, and you can read about those as well as examples of the other themes that I'm talking about today in our report that we published last week on the leading themes on WeChat in the first half of 2019. But just to share a few examples that did really well on WeChat this year, Tourism New Zealand wrote about a Chinese reality show that was filmed in New Zealand. Tourism Austria wrote a post that quite tenuously linked Game of Thrones to Austrian wine production, and Travel South USA wrote about filming locations in North Carolina. Looking specifically at museums, while most posts by museums feature pieces from the museum's collection or special exhibitions, another angle that seems to be quite popular is introducing people who work at the museum. So the Victoria and Albert Museum in London and the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco both featured their directors in very successful posts on WeChat this year, while the Museum of Modern Art in New York City wrote about their curator, and that post was very well received as well. As I said many times this year, short video is the biggest trend for Chinese digital marketing right now. And we've gone from having a video now and again in WeChat posts to having videos and GIFs in the top posts across all industry verticals almost every week. I would strongly recommend that those of you who are doing digital marketing for China invest in some video content for the Chinese market, or that you adapt your existing video content for China by at least subtitling it. Or alternatively, on a smaller scale, you can think of other ways to include GIFs, movement, and interactivity in your social media posts. Some examples here of popular posts with video content from this year so far has been All Nippon Airways in-flight safety video, which was a kabuki-themed video. Tourism Australia posted a video of kangaroos on a soccer field. And at the beginning of the year, Visit Norway posted a video that, it was not a short video actually, it was almost 7 minutes long. And that post got Visit Norway over 62,000 views for the week, which is a very high number for a National Tourism Board account article on WeChat, and especially for Visit Norway. Finally, a few other themes that come up throughout 2019's content. Food is not quite as big a theme as it was in 2018, but it's still reliable, and Macau publishes a regular food guide. Cruise lines and even airlines also frequently write about their dining options. Hong Kong and Los Angeles have both gotten good results for articles that tell you where and how to take the best photos in the city. And while flower-related content isn't quite as prevalent in 2019 as it was in 2018, it still helped Japan and Edinburgh to reach their highest post views for the year. And notably, both of those popular posts were about cherry blossoms specifically. So what's coming next? In terms of areas for Chinese tourism growth, small customized tours are really taking off and not just a form of travel for the very rich anymore. We are also seeing younger travelers, both in terms of families traveling together with children and young people going on graduation trips and/or educational tours. Sports tourism, both in participation and spectatorship, has more potential. So for example, UEFA has an Alipay mini program now where Alipay users will be able to apply for Euro 2020 tickets through the Alipay app. For those of you who want to learn more about Chinese outbound tourism, I would recommend Dragon Trail's newly released book, China, the Future of Travel. The essential handbook for the tourism and hospitality industries includes newly revised information on everything from Chinese tourist consumer behavior to digital marketing to working with the Chinese travel trade. We're offering electronic copies for free. All you need to do is fill out an application form on our website, chinafutureoftravel.com. Finally, before moving on to our Q&A session, I'd like to announce our August webinar coming up in about a month on Wednesday, August 28th. Dragon Trail's President Americas, Matt Grayson, and I will be addressing the question of how to stand out in an uncertain market, including working with limited or reduced budgets and how to determine which market segments to focus on for the best results. This webinar is primarily aimed at a North American audience, given the current climate that I discussed earlier in today's webinar, and we'll be giving more specifics about the kind of situation of Chinese tourism to North America at that time too. The webinar will only be held at our later webinar time, which is this webinar time, 5 p.m. in London, 9 a.m. in Los Angeles, and 12 p.m. in New York City. But of course, the webinar is open to anyone, whether or not you are based in North America. You can find more information about the webinar on our website, and there's a link to register for the webinar below, as well as on the event on our website. So at this point, we'll move on to the Q&A. I can see there are quite a lot of questions waiting for me to have a look at. Also, if there are any questions that you would prefer to ask us directly, or that I don't have exact numbers or answers on today, you can email me directly at sienna.pc@dragontrail.com. My email address is on the screen here, and also email us at communications@dragontrail.com. I'll be able to see emails to both of those addresses.